Are you awakening and hearing voices? It's totally normal, but what is it? I'm Sophia Persephone, this is Darlie the cat, and in this video I'm going to answer the question, what is the voice in my head during spiritual awakening? So first of all, you're not hearing one voice, you're hearing several voices, but they all sound like you. Confusing, right? It's because there's no language in the higher dimensions. So when your guides or your higher self or other entities want to talk to you, they borrow your voice. But if that's the case, how do you know exactly who is speaking to you? There is a way. And in just a minute, I'm going to show you how to identify the different voices in your head during spiritual awakening. But first of all, I'm going to explain that there's 4 compartments of the mind, because otherwise you can't understand where these voices are coming from. Yes, that's right. We think of our human avatars as an I, but in fact, we are a we. We're a collaboration between 4 fairly autonomous entities. And people often lump everything into conscious versus subconscious, but it's a lot more complex than that. Here's how it works. You have the unconscious mind, which is the ego. You have the subconscious mind, which is the body. You have the conscious mind, which is the soul. And you have the superconscious mind, which is your higher self. And that is situated in the upper dimensions. Now, all of these parts of the mind have their own agendas, and they're going to try to communicate with the entire system because they want to influence its behavior. And that's a large part of what you're hearing during spiritual awakening. You can also pick up voices from outside of your own system, so I'm going to talk about that in the second half of this video. Okay, so how do you know which part of your mind is trying to communicate with you? This is the fail-safe way. Voices from different sources appear in different areas of your head. Had you noticed? I promise you, if you listen really carefully next time, you'll spot it immediately. If you're in early awakening, so that's before the spiritual dark night of the soul, then the voices from each part of your mind are resonating in this way. If your subconscious or your ego is talking, you're going to hear it in the lower part of your head. It's kind of around here. If your conscious mind is talking or thinking, then you're going to hear it here. It's right in your pineal gland. This is your manifestation point. This is where your active thoughts are coming from. And if your superconscious mind is talking to you, in the earlier stages of awakening, you're going to hear it at the crown and the upper back of your head. Now, this does change a little bit later in awakening after the spiritual dark night of the soul. And the reason for that is that you're in the process of doing some really important things. Firstly, you're shedding your ego and you're subduing your subconscious. And secondly, you're progressively integrating with your higher self. So when you're in the 6th stage of awakening, advanced learning, you'll notice that you're receiving little to no communication from the ego and subconscious. This kind of monkey mind chatter has switched off. And communication from your superconscious or your higher self moves nearer and nearer to the front of your head. And eventually what will happen is this voice will appear in the same place as your conscious mind, right where the pineal gland is situated. And that's because you're integrated, you're one and the same. Now, your guides will also use this channel that you're creating between yourself and your higher self, and you'll observe the same thing with their voices. They move progressively towards the front of your head during your awakening. So what do the voices of your higher self and your guides sound like? So as I said, tonally, they're going to sound like your voice, and that can make it really difficult to trust them in the early stages of awakening because you wonder if it's something you've just made up, but it isn't. It is interdimensional communication. The telltale sign is that the way your guides and higher self talk is different. They are very succinct. They are abrupt even at times, and they'll just use 1 or 2 words. The reason that they do this is because efficiency is really, really important. They only have so much energy they can expend on helping people to awaken. So everywhere they can save energy, they will. And if that means using 1 or 2 words, that's what they're going to do. Now, the ego and the subconscious, on the other hand, they talk a lot. So you're going to get a kind of stream of consciousness. This is another way that you can differentiate between voices coming from the different parts of the mind. So If you're hearing short, direct sentences at the crown, the upper back, or even at the upper front of your head, if you're on the other side of the dark night of the soul, then that is either your higher self or your guide. As you progress through your awakening, you might also find you can hear them talking to each other. Now, when can you hear these voices? Verbal communication increases throughout the awakening journey as a natural consequence of integration with your higher self. So in early awakening, you might hear very little. Instead, what you're getting is images. That's very common. Later on, you might hear voices, but only in meditation. And then beyond that, you might hear voices all the time, whether you're meditating or not. This partly depends on your innate psychic ability. If you're clairaudient, you're going to pick up voices a lot more easily. However, the only time you can be really sure that you're hearing your higher self or your guides is when you're meditating. And that's because meditation is sacred. No one can interfere with your scheduled conversations between your guides and your higher self. So if you need advice, always ask for it in a formal meditation session. It doesn't mean you won't get it at other times. It just means that you can be really sure of where it's coming from when you're meditating. You might also be wondering why sometimes you can hear the voices really clearly and other times you can't. If you've been closely following your spiritual routine, then communication is going to be louder and clearer. Or if you attain a very deep state of trance, communication will be louder and clearer. So some days you're just going to hear better than others. If you're finding you're not hearing voices very well and you want to get that communication back more strongly, all you need to do is add in 1 or 2 extra meditation sessions during your day, and you'll find that clarity returns. In a moment, I'm going to talk about voices in the wider environment. But firstly, if you're finding this video useful, please hit the like button to help it reach more people so that they can have this information too. Okay, so other voices outside of your own system and your guides. If you're clairaudient, then it's possible to pick up all sorts of disembodied voices in your environment. Now, in my experience, they still sound like your own voice, but if you've had a different experience, I'd be really interested to hear, so please leave me a comment. You can pick up general airwave chatter coming from other dimensions very easily if you're clairaudient, or also you can intercept other human thoughts telepathically. I also find that outside of meditation, you hear voices which sound like your guides, but they're giving you conflicting information. You don't quite trust what they're saying to you. And in that case, you're probably being misdirected by someone on the opposing team in the game of life. I'll link you to the video, and they're trying to disrupt your mission. The other reason that could be happening is you're going through the judgment learning module of awakening. That's a topic for another video, but that usually comes just before the dark night of the soul and in the stage after the spiritual dark night of the soul. So what is the voice in your head during spiritual awakening? It's either from your lower consciousness or your higher consciousness, or you're picking up external signals. The more you meditate and spend time with your guides and your higher self, the more you're going to be able to distinguish between them. I hope that's helped, and if you want to know more about what's really happening to the mind during spiritual awakening, then watch this video next.